Okay, men, we're talking once again about the Ten Commandments, and we're talking about one that we need today, that if we keep this, it'll help us to be the men that God designed us to be. If we break it, it does something in our soul. All the commandments of God are not so that we can't have any fun. They're the things that if we break them, it damages our lives. It stops us from becoming the men that God created us to be. If we keep them, it helps us to be who God created us to be. And we're on the seventh commandment, and that seventh commandment that we started talking about last time was this: thou shalt not commit adultery. Now, we know this says in the Old Testament, it's that outward act. If we take this to the New Testament, Jesus took this to a totally different level. He said, if you look at a woman to lust after her in your heart, you've already committed adultery with her. And in the New Testament, we've broken the commandment if just based on what we imagine and what we think about. So, men, I want to challenge you. What do you look at? And if you really want to know the truth, what are we looking at on the computer? What are we looking at? What do we let our eyes go to? Because sometimes we begin to enter into this sin because of what we let our eyes get focused on. What we look at when we're on the computer, and we sneak over here and look at this, and we look at that, and we look at the other thing. I have this thing with my wife. My wife loves to go to home shows, and she likes to go and see these beautiful homes. And I tell her, I don't want to go look at all these pretty, pristine homes. And she says, why? I said, because, honey, I'll tell you why. After I see those beautiful, perfect homes, then I think what I live in is a piece of junk. And I live in a decent home. I live in a nice home. It's not a mansion, but I've got a nice home. But when you look at perfect homes that have never been lived in, banged into, or anything else, it makes you feel like what you've got isn't that good. Why do you bring that up? Men, if you start looking at young girls with barely any clothes on or no clothes on, and you start looking at that, then what you do is start looking at what you've got. And when you look at what you've got, you devalue what you've got because you've been looking at things you shouldn't have been looking at. And that, the Bible says in the New Testament, can be as bad as hopping in bed with somebody. Some of you men wouldn't dare hop in bed with another woman, but yet you let imaginations and you look at things that cause your attention to go to something other than your wife, other than the one that God gave you. I've learned something. I've been married 35 years. I purpose to love and to value and be excited by my wife. The book of Proverbs says that, men, you're supposed to rejoice with the wife of your youth. If you'll spend time imagining, thinking about her, thinking about how wonderful she is, thinking about all that she means to your life and all the blessing that she's been to your life, you'll find you'll begin to be excited by her and not by those scantily clad young ladies. Just challenging you, men. What are you looking at and what are you thinking about?